G'day, Starlo here. You know, ever since the Squidgies Bio-Tough range hit tackle shops in 2017, they've become a go-to lure for a lot of tournament and social anglers right around Australia. And it's not hard to see why. They've got all that fish catching action of the Squidgies range that's been around for nearly 2 decades, but they've now combined it with a material that's a lot tougher and stretchier, and also much better for the environment due to its biodegradable capacity. And we've listened to you and gone for small lures, little finesse lures to use for things like bream and whiting and bass and trout and perch. Just have a look at these. It starts off with a little 65mm grub. Now, this looks like a scaled down wriggler in some ways, but it's actually very, very different. The tail is much longer, has much more action. This thing starts to work at the slowest of speeds, which means it swims really well on the drop on a jig head. And even when it's just sitting there on the bottom in the current, that tail is working. And because they're quite buoyant, it does stand up in the water. You've got to see these things in the water to really appreciate them. They're 65mm long, and they're just absolute fish candy for all sorts of finesse species. I love them. And of course, it's super tough and stretchy, so you'll keep right on catching fish one after another. But equally as exciting is the little double tail grub, arguably the best of the critter baits in the whole range now. With its double tail, and both tails are just like the single tail on that little grub, they start moving as soon as they hit the water. You can work it really, really slowly, or just dead stick it in the current, let it bounce along, or even sit on the bottom, stand up with those 2 tentacles waving there. It imitates a shrimp or a crab or a prawn or just something edible. And fish are absolutely loving the little double tail grub. And like all the other Bio-Toughs, it's super tough and stretchy. Even if it loses one leg, it's going to keep catching fish. And then we've got 2 different styles of crawler. Now these, again, are little crustacean imitations. One's 45mm and the other one is 40mm, and the slightly bigger one has these flatter claws that give it a little bit more action in the water, whereas the shorter one is a little bit chubbier. They're both highly buoyant, so they stand up at rest. Now once again, you can fish these on jig heads. You can bounce them along the bottom, drag them along the bottom, let them just sit there and stand up in the current. And they also make extra good trailers for things like little spinnerbaits or chatterbaits. You can put them on those skirted jigs. There are so many different ways to fish these. You've got to check out the new models in the Squidgy Bio-Tough range. They're catching a heck of a lot of fish right around the country. I'll catch you next time. Until then, tight lines.